All right, what's going on, guys? So today I'm gonna go over my 2 and 3 day condensed conjugate model or method of training for combat sports and all the sports that are going to entail you being ready at all times. Let's get into it. All right, so when you're talking about the condensed conjugate model, this is a method of training that I've formulated based off of the conjugate method, right? That's the West Side method. That's Louis Simmons. That's one of my mentors. So I basically took the 4-day split and condensed it into 2 or 3 day training sessions. That means throughout the week. So every day we're gonna be working on a particular special strength that are going to enhance the quality of the athlete and getting them ready and capable of performing at all times throughout the year. Now, the main benefits from this is, again, it's a concurrent model. So you are gonna be working multiple training methods and systems throughout the weeks. You're also gonna be ready at all times. There'll be no delineation of strengths. So this is not a block style. This is not a linear or non-linear approach. This is a concurrent approach to training. This is something I've been utilizing for right around 6 or 7 years. I started working with this with a lot of my athletes from the combat sport world, because I knew that, one, we were gonna have limited time to train them. At least we would have 1 day, maybe 2 and 3 at the most. So I needed to make sure that I was getting a large amount of work done. So that training density needed to be high inside of training for that particular day and throughout the weeks, so that we can get them prepared for the sport ahead. Now, the main benefits, or the sports and the people that are going to benefit from this, is combat sport athletes. So that's MMA, that's judo, that's boxing, that's Brazilian jiu-jitsu, etc. Also, in-season team sports. So that's football, basketball, baseball, soccer, all that stuff, because again, we still want to make sure that they're at the very least, maintaining their strengths throughout the season. And this is really going to help them with that. Another group of people that will benefit from this is the tactical population. So you're talking police, fire rescue, and military, right? So they have to be ready at all times for anything that occurs, right? So that's why I like the conjugate approach. There's constant variation. They allow them to get stronger and more efficient in all these different movements and exercises that will help them correlate over to what they need to be prepared for. Let's go over the models, right? You have the 2-day model. Now, the 2-day model is gonna consist of day 1 being maximal effort lower body and dynamic effort upper body. And we break it up into quadrants because we wanna make sure that we're not overloading the nervous system in one particular strength. When you first start out, you're gonna do dynamic effort on the upper. So you'll be doing some type of med ball throws, ballistic training, and then you'll be doing some type of speed strength. And I'll go over the special strengths in a minute. Then right after that, you'll go into a heavy effort or a max effort lift for the lower body. And then you'll finish that off with a supplemental and an accessory movement that's going to help correlate over to whatever main movement you're doing. Now, day 2 is gonna be maximal effort upper and dynamic effort lower. So we're just flipping that. And you wanna do that 72 hours apart so that you allow the nervous system to recover and you're not overtraining within that particular time frame. So 72 hours will give you the adequate amount of time to recover from the training prior to that. All right, now with the maximal effort upper, you're gonna be doing some type of press or pull variation in a maximal or 1 repetition max, or you can do heavy efforts, and we'll go off of that in a minute, and I'll tell you more in detail. Now, for the 2-day model, you wanna make sure that you're getting a large amount of work done within that limited time. So again, you're gonna probably get around 60 to 90 minutes of work, and that's also including the warm-up. So the warm-up needs to be predicated towards the main lift and also what you're doing for the dynamic work. So a full body warm-up will definitely be conducive for this particular model. Now, I'll go into more detail on the warm-ups and on how to program this accordingly for any particular athlete in my mentorship program. So if you want to find out more details on that, check out the link down below for the online coaching course that you'll get access for life with. All right, so let's go over the methods of training. And this is based off of the Science and Practice of Strength Training by Vladimir Zatsiorsky. If you haven't checked out that book and you are a strength coach or you're an athlete trying to learn about this stuff, trust me, that's the book that you need to get. All right, so the first method of training, and one of the most important methods, if you ask Louis, is gonna be the maximal effort method. Now, that's lifting loads against a maximal resistance. For maximal effort, you have to do a 1 repetition max. So that's 100% of effort. Now, there's other ways to do it, but this is primarily what you're gonna be looking at to get, from an adaptation standpoint, is maximal force. And you'll get that with the max effort, all right? The next one is gonna be repetition effort method. Now that's lifting non-maximal loads to a failure or an AMRAP set. This is gonna help build hypertrophy. It's gonna help you build somewhat of endurance, mental fortitude. So these are really good to do further away from a training or from a competition phase. Again, we're doing concurrent models, so there is really no phase, but there is a stage of time where you need to focus certain things at certain times. And I'll go into detail more on that later. All right. Now, dynamic effort method, that's lifting submaximal loads with higher velocities. That's where that speed's gonna come into play. So you need to be able to move weight very fast to give you a higher rate of force development and to help with the ability to recruit motor units as fast as possible. That's gonna give you the ability to be powerful and have that explosiveness that you need to, whether it be for football, for combat sports, or for a tactical population where they need to get in and out of certain positions and situations. Now, for this, when you look at it from a physics standpoint, right, you have force, and force meaning that maximal effort, right? You have force equals mass times acceleration. So the mass that we get is from the maximal effort. The acceleration is you're gonna get that from the dynamic effort. And that's where you're gonna be able to equal out that force production. Now, the conjugate method development of multiple training methods and modalities at once with a constant variation, because we wanna eliminate accommodation, right? We don't wanna get worse at a particular movement. You can only do things over and over again for so long before you actually get worse at it. So we wanna make sure that we're constantly varying so that we allow ourselves to adapt and keep on adapting over time. Let's look at the focus points for special strengths. Now, the special strengths are gonna be absolute strength, strength endurance, strength speed, speed strength, and explosive strength. Now, absolute strength is gonna be your 1 repetition max, that's 90+%. So your absolute strength is going to help you with that overall force. That's gonna allow you to set the baseline for all the other special strengths. You have strength endurance, right? That's 5+ repetitions, usually under 80%. So you wanna look at that as more of a supplemental lift. That's gonna be after your main lift, and that's gonna help you enhance other qualities from a movement perspective that will correlate over into the sport realm and also give you endurance to keep on moving in that particular plane of motion. I'll go into more details on exercises in a minute. Strength speed, now you're looking at 90 to 95%. So that's that right underneath that absolute strength, that's right underneath that 1 repetition max. The strength speed, you can utilize bands, and really we like to do that because it allows us to strain over time. When you have more bands than bar weight, again, that's a lot of tension that you have to develop and strain over time throughout the full range of motion. So now you have accommodated resistance, and at the end range, it's at its hardest. Usually when you're looking at a squat, at the end range is actually at its least difficult. When you throw the bands on there, you flip that, and now they have to produce force all the way through the end range. And that's the same thing that we use for speed strength, but we keep the intensities a little bit lower because we want to be faster. You're looking at about 75 to 85%, and this is based off of special strengths for sport, something that Louis Simmons has talked about in the past with Westside Barbell. So I take a lot of my stuff from him because, again, that's where I learned it from. Speed strength, 75 to 85%. Now, if you're gonna do it with band tension, you're looking at, you got 50 to 60%, right? A lot of guys will go 50 to 60% with 25% band tension or 30% band tension, and that's where you'll get that same percentage there too as well. Explosive strength, and now that's gonna be a little bit lower on the intensity because we're gonna go ahead and have more velocity being produced. So those are your jumps, your throws, things of that nature. 30 to 50% of load, and then also body weight movements too for ballistic and plyometric activity. We're gonna go over theories. The first theory is gonna be the peak contraction theory. That's the strength that's built up at its weakest point. So in every weakest point, everybody is subjective, but for the most part, you have common themes, right? There's a weak point at the bottom of a squat. There's a weak point at the lockout of a bench press. There's a weak point at the lockout of a deadlift. And for that would be your peak contraction. So if you look at it like from a pec deck standpoint, if you're looking at a bodybuilding particular movement, the hardest part is when you start because it's further away from midline of the body. So that's where your peak contraction will come into play. A lot of people work in the peak contraction, especially those who are trying to build hypertrophy, because it's gonna get them the strongest and also build muscle that's gonna allow them to have that more range of motion over time It's gonna allow them to increase their strength, which will in turn help them the ability to build more muscle with those positions. Accommodating resistance, and that's what we use with bands and chains. And that's gonna be the development of tension throughout the complete range of motion. Now, if you're talking about trying to build athletic performance and trying to build full-on compensatory acceleration or acceleration throughout the entire range of motion, which will enhance the quality of an athlete, this is something that you want to do. And this is why we use bands and chains. Use bands to increase the force over time. There's no deceleration of the movement, which allows you to put maximal intent into the movement. Same thing with chains too as well. You have more of an abrupt loading with that. Bands, we can get into detail on that, but I think bands are superior to chains because you have an overspeed eccentric, so you have a stretch reflex occurring there, but the chains are good too if you want abrupt loading, and that's gonna be good for increasing force over time. Now, accentuation, that's gonna be closer to a competition because that's gonna go ahead and you're gonna train that strength in the range of the sport movement where demands for high force production is maximal. So what we would do is you would use accommodated resistance and put them in a position for an accentuation phase, whether it be for jumping in a mid-thigh pull or a high deadlift or a trap bar deadlift, something like that, where the positioning is gonna match what they're gonna be doing inside the sport realm. And you wanna produce force from that particular position. You would definitely do this closer to competition or in season. Moving over to the 3-week waves. Now, this is how you're going to program your dynamic effort. Dynamic effort, again, is 50 to 60% plus 25 to 30% bands or chains, and that's gonna be 30% of your 1 rep max, so remember that. Or you're just gonna go ahead and do 75 to 85% of bar weight, and you can keep it there. If you have someone new to lifting weights, I would say utilize just bar weight until they understand how to move load, and then you can start to play with the accommodated resistance. Now, my main lifts that I use for my combat sport athletes are gonna be these main lifts here. Now, this is gonna be subjective towards the individual based on limitations, based on compensation strategies. But for the most part, we're gonna do some sort of box squat. We're gonna do some sort of sumo pull, bench press, floor press, conventional deadlift, trap bar deadlift, front squats, and Zercher squats. Now, the Zercher squats and the front squats can also be transitioned into a box squat too as well. So all you do is just throw the box underneath. The goal for the box squat is rate of force development, right? You're allowing yourself to break up the eccentric concentric chain. You're allowing yourself to produce force from a static to dynamic, and you're relaxed to overcome by dynamic because some muscles need to relax to be able to sit down on the box, but some muscles need to be stabilized and turned on so that you don't crumble on the box. Really good for athletes that lack that rate of force, that lack absolute strength. This is something that you want to implement. A lot of my guys, if you look at it from a different sport perspective, I train a lot of judo athletes, boxers, MMA, and the one thing I would say with the boxers is they have great stretch reflex, but they have less ability to produce force fast or from a static to dynamic. On the flip side to that, a lot of my wrestlers are able to produce force fast, but lack that stretch shortening cycle, that they lack that elasticity. So depending on the athlete is gonna be dependent upon what exercise you use and what methods you use to enhance the quality of performance. You can check out all this stuff in my mentorship down below, link is in the description. Make sure you go ahead and sign up for a call with my team so you understand what exactly it entails, so there's no guesswork. I wanna make sure I make this announcement. At the end of the year, we're talking the 2nd week of December, we're having a full-on Daru Strong summit that we're bringing out all the coaches. Every coach that I came in contact with that I know that has high value. I don't wanna say the names just now, but trust me, you do not wanna miss this. We're gonna talk business, we're gonna talk coaching strategies, we're gonna talk athletic performance, and we're gonna get a training session here at the Daru Strong Performance Gym in Boca Raton, Florida. So that's about it. If you have any questions, hit the comments down below. Make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification if you are subscribed so you know when all my videos come out. I'm trying to knock out at least 3 to 4 a week. Thank you for your support. I'll see you again next time. Peace.